Welcome to the Decoding Causality podcast. We are back after a long time.
We really are. It feels incredibly good to be sitting behind these microphones again.
It really does. And as you might have guessed from the title, this serves as the official wrap-up of Season 1. Throughout this past season, we took a highly methodical approach. We summarized and dissected each individual chapter of Judea Pearl and Dana McKenzie's landmark book, The Book of Why.
Right, going chapter by chapter.
Yeah. But today, our mission is different. We are zooming out to provide an overarching, comprehensive summary of the entire book.
Sort of an in-depth exploration of the big picture.
Exactly. We are weaving together the most crucial themes, simplifying the really heavy technical concepts, and discarding the overly repetitive subjects.
Just getting to the absolute core of what Pearl calls the Causal Revolution.
Right. And before we jump into the mechanics of all this, I need to note that this podcast and the summary were prepared by Amir Rafai.
Which means today we are, looking at the forest, not just the individual trees. And to understand that forest, we really have to return to that provocative idea you opened with.
The idea of dumb data.
Yeah. How can data be dumb? Calling it that sounds almost blasphemous in today's tech climate, but it is the foundational premise we need to tackle today.
So walk us through that, because I think people hear data and they automatically think knowledge.
Well, what's critical to understand here is the stark distinction between storing information and actually possessing understanding.
Okay.
Data, no matter how vast or granular or perfectly organized it is, can only ever tell us what happened. It's just a historical record.
Just a list of past events.
Exactly. It takes a conceptual model, a human mind, or perhaps soon a fundamentally new type of artificial intelligence to understand why it happened.
Because the why is the language of cause and effect.
Yeah.
It's like the invisible scaffolding of reality. Data just shows you the surface level events, but causality shows you the gears turning underneath.
That's a really great way to visualize it. Traditional statistics and even the most advanced modern machine learning systems we read about every day, like deep neural networks or large language models.
Right, this stuff driving the current AI boom.
Yeah, they are essentially just fitting lines to data points on a monumental scale. They operate by finding associations.
So it's pattern matching.
Exactly. A traditional statistician finds a correlation between two variables on a spreadsheet. A neural network finds correlations across billions of parameters. They are incredibly powerful, highly sophisticated curve fitters.
But they're just fitting curves.
Right. They are fundamentally model blind. They do not possess a mental model of the physical world they are actually operating in.
Okay, I want to challenge that because I think a lot of people listening might be rolling their eyes at the idea of modern AI being called a curve fitter.
I get that. It sounds dismissive.
Yeah, look at something like AlphaGo. A few years ago, it beat Lee Sedol, the human world champion, at the game of Go. And Go is a board game with more potential configurations than there are atoms in the observable universe.
It's massively complex.
Right. It required immense strategic depth. That doesn't seem like dumb curve fitting to me. That seems like profound intelligence.
Okay, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
AlphaGo is an undisputed masterpiece of engineering. There is no denying that. But we have to look at the environment it operates within.
You mean the game board?
Yeah. AlphaGo succeeded so spectacularly because it was functioning in a closed, perfectly rule-bound world.
Ah, I see.
The rules of Go are static. They never change halfway through a match. The board is perfectly observable. There is no hidden information. Every single action taken on that board has a mathematically defined consequence.
It's a pristine mathematical universe.
Exactly. But step outside that pristine universe into the messy, chaotic real world, and things fall apart quickly.
Because the rules are always changing.
Right. If you are trying to predict the global economy, or develop targeted new pharmaceutical drugs, or set complex public policy, data alone lacks adaptability because the rules of the real world are constantly shifting.
Let's ground this. How does that failure of adaptability actually look in practice? Give me an example.
Okay, let's take modern medicine. Suppose you train a state-of-the-art deep learning system in a really high-end hospital in New York.
Okay, so a very specific environment.
Exactly. You feed it a massive data set. Patient vital signs, treatment histories, drug dosages, demographic data, and outcomes. After processing all of this, the AI becomes incredibly accurate at predicting patient deterioration.
It sounds great so far. It saves lives.
It does. But then you take that exact same software and deploy it to a rural hospital in a different part of the country.
The environment completely changes.
Completely. The new hospital has different dietary habits among its patients, different socioeconomic baseline health, maybe different protocols for when to administer certain drugs.
Even different heart rate monitors, right?
Yes, even just different models of monitors that output data slightly differently. Suddenly, that billion-dollar AI is useless. It starts making dangerous predictions.
Wait, really? Just from moving hospitals?
Yeah, because it has to learn everything all over again from scratch. It simply fit a very complex mathematical function to the specific quirks of the New York hospital's data.
So it didn't actually learn medicine.
No, it never possessed a causal model of how the disease actually progresses in the human biological system.
Wow. So it learned that symptom A is associated with outcome B in New York, but it never understood that a specific virus causes symptom A.
You nailed it.
That is a massive vulnerability. I want to look at another concrete example, perhaps the most hyped technology of our era.
Let me guess, driverless cars.
You got it. Transportation engineering and autonomous vehicles. We've fed these self-driving cars millions of hours of direct footage.
Endless data.
Right. They've seen every road sign, every weather condition. But imagine a scenario where a self-driving car's cameras spot a pedestrian on the sidewalk holding a bottle of whiskey.
That is a highly unpredictable real-world variable.
Exactly. A purely data-driven system, unless it had been specifically programmed for or had trained on thousands of literal examples of pedestrians holding liquor bottles at that exact angle at that specific time of day.
It wouldn't know what to do.
Right. It might not know how to alter its driving behavior, just registers pedestrian. But if you put a human driver behind the wheel or a system equipped with a causal model, the reaction is entirely different. We understand the mechanism.
I can trace the causal chain instantly in our heads.
Yes. We know intuitively that drinking alcohol causes intoxication. Intoxication causes impaired motor function and erratic behavior.
And that means danger.
Exactly. Therefore, that specific pedestrian has a much higher probability of stepping into the street unpredictably. We understand the why of the situation, so we immediately ease off the accelerator and hover our foot over the brake.
Because the human driver is utilizing a causal model of human behavior in physics. The current machine learning system only has a massive database of past visual associations.
It sees a shape.
Right. It doesn't know why intoxicated pedestrians stumble. It just knows what a stumble looks like geometrically if it happens to catch one on camera.
It's totally blind to the underlying reality.
Exactly. This severe limitation, this wall we hit when we rely only on associations, is why Judea Pearl introduces the ladder of causation.
The famous ladder.
Yes, it serves as the central metaphor of the entire book, mapping out the evolutionary stages of intelligence.
It's a brilliant framework because it takes this incredibly dense mathematical philosophy and turns it into something you can visualize. So let's climb it together for the audience.
Let's do it.
The foundation of this hierarchy is rung 1. This is the rung of association, or as Pearl casually calls it, seeing. The defining question of this rung is simply, what if I see variable X?
Right. This is the baseline level of observing regularities in our environment. It is where almost the entirety of the animal kingdom exists, and it is where the vast majority of our current machine learning programs are stuck.
Give us an example of rung 1 in nature.
Consider an owl hunting a rat in a field. The owl observes the rat's trajectory, the speed of its movement, the direction the grass is rustling. Through repetition, the owl forms an association.
It's predicting the future based on past data.
Exactly. It can predict exactly where the rat will be in the next 2 seconds to execute a strike.
But it's not analyzing the rat's motivations.
No, the owl doesn't need to know why the rat is running, whether it's fleeing a snake or running toward food. It just needs to know how seeing one thing, the rustling grass, changes its statistical belief in another thing, the future location of its prey.
It's entirely about how seeing variable X changes the probability of variable Y.
Exactly.
Let me offer a classic analogy that I think makes the limitation of this rung crystal clear.
Go for it.
Think about a barometer on the wall of your house and a severe rainstorm. If you look at the barometer and you see the atmospheric pressure dropping rapidly, you know a storm is coming. You grab your umbrella.
The dropping barometer is highly associated with the arrival of rain.
Right. But I mean, the barometer didn't actually cause the storm.
Of course not.
And we all know this intuitively. If I decide I don't want it to rain tomorrow, I can't just take the barometer off the wall, hack into its mechanics, and artificially force the needle to show high pressure.
The storm is still going to hit your house.
Exactly. This perfectly illustrates why we say correlation is not causation and why it matters practically. At rung 1, you can predict the weather beautifully, but you cannot control it.
And that inability to control outcomes based on rung one data is a massive problem when we start looking at society.
How so?
Well, think about how much we rely on surveys and polls in public policy or political campaigns.
Oh, right. We're drowning in poll data.
Yeah. A survey would show a very strong association between a certain demographic, let's say suburban voters in a specific tax bracket, and a particular election result. The data clearly tells you they tend to vote a certain way.
So the campaign managers see the barometer dropping.
Right. But that rung one data does not explain why they vote that way. Are they voting based on economic anxiety? Are they motivated by social issues? Is it just historical party loyalty passed down from their parents?
We don't know just from the numbers.
Exactly. If you are a policymaker trying to pass a bill or a campaign manager trying to actually flip their votes, you need to know the why to change their minds. You have to know which lever to pull. Rung one cannot tell you which lever works.
Because it's just observing. Which means we are forced by the limitations of our own ambitions to climb higher. We can't just passively observe, we have to act.
We have to move up the ladder.
Yes. That brings us to rung 2 of the ladder of causation. This is the rung of intervention, or doing. Now, our defining question evolves from, what if I see something, to what if I do something?
This represents a monumental cognitive leap in human evolution. To answer what if I do, we can no longer rely on passively collected observational data. We have to actively reach out and change the world.
So this is where humans started separating from other animals.
Historically, yes. You can think of this as the realm of early tool-making humans. A hominid doesn't just observe fire. They discovered that actively striking a specific type of flint causes a spark. They intervene in nature.
And what does that look like in the modern world?
In modern science, this rung is defined by the randomized controlled trial, or the RCT.
The absolute gold standard of medical research.
Yes. If you want to know if a new blood pressure medication actually works, you don't just look at medical records of people who happen to take it.
Because that would just be rung 1 seeing.
Exactly. You take a large group of patients, randomly assign the actual drug to one half and a sugar pill placebo to the other half, and you intervene. You actively change the physical reality for half those people.
And why is the randomization so important there?
Because you randomize the groups, you wash out all the other background noise, allowing you to isolate the specific causal effect of the drug.
Let's apply this concept to a real-world business or economic scenario, because I think this is where executives and leaders get tangled up constantly.
Oh, absolutely. Business is full of causal confusion.
Right. So imagine you're the CEO of a major retail company. You just launched a massive, expensive new advertising campaign across the country.
Okay, big investment.
Yeah. But at the exact same time, the federal government passes a new tax cut that gives middle-class consumers a lot more disposable income.
That's a huge confounding factor.
Exactly. Suddenly, your quarterly sales skyrocket. The data shows a beautiful upward trend. But as the CEO, you are facing a massive dilemma next quarter. Did our million-dollar ad campaign cause those sales to go up, or was it just the tax law?
Or to use a simpler microeconomic question, what happens if we double the retail price of our toothpaste?
Right. You can't answer the toothpaste question just by looking at past sales data.
Why not?
Because in the past data, the price was always the same. You have no historical record of the double price.
Exactly. To figure that out, you need to simulate an intervention. Now, if you are that company and you have the luxury of time and budget, you might run an experiment. You roll out the higher price in a few test markets and see what happens.
Like an A/B test.
Right. But what Judea Pearl's Causal Revolution provides is a framework to mathematically answer those rung 2 intervention questions using only passively collected rung 1 data.
Wait, really? You can answer a doing question with seeing data.
Yes, but, and this is the massive caveat, you can only do this if you possess a causal model. He operationalizes this through something called causal diagrams.
This is where the actual mechanics of the revolution come into play.
Mm-hmm.
So let's describe what this looks like. A causal diagram is, on its surface, a very simple visual map.
Very simple.
You draw dots, or nodes, representing your variables, and you draw directional arrows connecting them to show the flow of cause and effect. So if we go back to our medical study, you would draw a dot for your cause, that's called drug D.
Yep.
And you draw an arrow pointing to a dot representing your effect, like lifespan L.
The elegance of these diagrams is that they are not just sketches on a whiteboard. They are rigorous mathematical objects. By mapping out the relationships, we can mathematically erase arrows to simulate interventions. Pearl calls this the do operator.
Okay, Let's slow down and explain how that math actually works conceptually, because erasing an arrow sounds a bit abstract. What does it mean to erase an arrow?
Okay, think about a patient in the real world deciding whether to take a drug. There are many arrows pointing to that decision. Maybe their income level affects whether they can afford it. Maybe their family history of disease makes them more likely to seek treatment.
Right, there are a bunch of reasons they might take it.
Those are all causal arrows pointing at the variable taking drug D. But when a researcher intervenes, when they run an RCT and force a patient to take the drug or the placebo, they are severing the drug from all those previous natural causes.
Oh, I see.
Income no longer matters. Family history no longer matters. The only cause of them taking the drug is the researcher's intervention.
You literally cut the arrows, pointing into the drug variable. You take total control of it.
Yes. And the calculus of causation allows us to simulate this exact surgery on the diagram mathematically. If we know the structure of the arrows, we can filter our observational data to isolate the path we care about.
So we can predict the results of an intervention without actually having to perform the physical experiment. Okay, I can hear the skeptics in Silicon Valley right now. Why go through all the trouble of building complex causal models and doing this advanced calculus when we can just experiment our way to the truth?
Because they experiment all the time.
Right. Tech companies run A/B tests on their platforms thousands of times a day. They change the color of a checkout button from blue to red, show it to half their users, and measure the click rate. They are living entirely on rung 2 through brute force experimentation. So why bother with the diagrams?
While for tech companies optimizing button colors, A/B testing is perfectly fine, the cost of experimentation is practically zero.
Nobody gets hurt if a button is red.
Exactly. But when we look at the broader scope of science and public policy, you often can't experiment. Sometimes it is physically impossible, like experimenting on macroeconomic factors. But more often, it is profoundly unethical.
We can't play God with human lives.
Look at the massive public health debates of the 1950s and 60s regarding smoking and lung cancer. Researchers wanted definitive, rung 2 proof that smoking causes cancer.
But they couldn't just test it.
No, we cannot ethically take 10,000 healthy teenagers, lock them in a controlled facility, and force half of them to smoke a pack a day for 40 years while denying the other half any tobacco just to count who gets tumors.
That would be horrific.
Yeah.
It is a moral impossibility.
So we are stuck with observational data. We only have rung 1 data of people who naturally chose to smoke and people who chose not to.
And that gave the tobacco industry a massive loophole, didn't it?
A huge one. Even brilliant statisticians like R.A. Fisher, one of the founding fathers of modern statistics, argued that because we couldn't run a randomized controlled trial, we couldn't definitively prove causation from the observational data.
He defended the tobacco companies.
He did. The tobacco companies exploited this model blindness, arguing that maybe there was a hidden smoking gene that caused both the craving for nicotine and the development of lung cancer.
Wow. So if that were true, quitting smoking wouldn't save you.
Exactly.
But causal diagrams bypass that entire trap.
They do. Causal diagrams and the associated decalculus allow us to ethically bypass impossible experiments. By explicitly drawing out the assumptions, identifying the potential confounding variables like genetics or environment, and applying the math to block those alternative paths.
We can isolate the real cause.
Yes. Researchers can extract undeniable causal truth from purely observational data. It closed the loophole. It is a monumental achievement for the philosophy of science.
And yet, as powerful as intervening is, it still isn't the ceiling of human thought. That brings us to the ultimate level, rung 3 of the ladder of causation.
The top of the ladder.
This is the rung of counterfactuals, or imagining. This is where we transcend physical reality entirely. The defining questions here are, what if I had done differently? And the most powerful word in human language, why?
This rung is the great filter. It is where human cognition separates entirely from the rest of the animal kingdom, and certainly from any AI we currently possess.
How does Pearl explain this leap?
Pearl uses a fascinating biblical analogy to illustrate this evolutionary milestone. In the book of Genesis, after Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge, God confronts them.
Okay.
He asks Adam a factual question, a rung 2 question. Did you eat from the tree?
He asks for the data.
But Adam doesn't just provide the data. He doesn't just say yes. He instantly generates an explanation. He explains why he did it, blaming Eve for giving him the fruit.
Oh, I see.
And Eve, in turn, explains her why, blaming the serpent for deceiving her.
They construct a narrative of cause and effect.
Yes. Humans didn't just evolve to process statistical associations. We evolved to generate explanations for our reality. To do that, we have to construct possible worlds in our minds.
It's like alternate timelines.
Exactly. We have to be able to imagine a reality that directly contradicts the one we are currently experiencing.
You know, we do this constantly, almost without thinking about it. Let me give a relatable, everyday scenario for you. Imagine you wake up with a terrible splitting headache.
Ugh, the worst.
Yeah. You drag yourself to the medicine cabinet, take an aspirin, wait 20 minutes, and you feel completely better. The rung one data is absolutely clear. Aspirin was taken, headache is gone.
Simple association.
But almost immediately, your human brain starts questioning the data. You ask yourself, was it really the aspirin that cured me? Or was it the large glass of water I drank with it?
Or maybe you just needed rest.
Exactly. Or the heavy meal I ate an hour earlier finally digesting. Or maybe my stress just went down because I finished a work email.
You are searching for the true cause among many possibilities, and to find it, you have to engage in counterfactual thinking.
Right. You have to close your eyes and build a fictional parallel universe in your head. You construct a world where everything is exactly the same. You still ate the meal, you still drank the water, you still sent the email.
Right up until the intervention.
Exactly, up until the exact moment you reached for the pill bottle. But in this alternate universe, you didn't take the aspirin. You hold that imaginary world up against the real world. If you imagine you still have a headache in that alternate world, then you conclude the aspirin was the true cause. You're comparing reality to a counterfactual projection.
It seems like a simple mental exercise, but the math behind it has massive life or death applications in the real world. To see how counterfactuals untangle impossible problems, let's look at a historical example Pearl highlights regarding public policy and medicine.
This is the smallpox vaccine paradox, right?
Yes. This is perhaps the most visceral demonstration of why rung-3 thinking is vital.
Set the scene for us.
When the smallpox vaccine was first heavily introduced and mandated in parts of Europe, an incredibly dangerous paradox emerged in the raw data. The government was collecting health statistics, and the numbers clearly show that more vaccinated children were dying from adverse reactions to the vaccine than unvaccinated children were dying from smallpox itself.
Wow. I can only imagine the panic. If you were a parent reading those numbers, you would be terrified.
Completely terrified.
Protesters literally marched in the streets crying, "Vaccines kill." And the frightening thing is, if you only looked at the surface-level rung one data, they appeared to be absolutely right.
The data explicitly stated the cure was producing more bodies than the disease.
So how do we fix this?
Well, they lacked a causal model to contextualize those numbers. To untangle this paradox, we have to look past the absolute counts and examine the structure generating them.
Let's work through the math together intuitively to see how the public got so confused.
Let's do it.
Let's imagine a town with a population of exactly 1 million children. Now, because of government mandates, let's assume an incredibly high vaccination rate of 99%.
Okay, so a huge majority are vaccinated.
Yeah. So 990,000 kids get the shot and only 10,000 remain unvaccinated. Now, no medical intervention is perfect. Let's say a tiny, tiny fraction of kids have a severe, fatal reaction to the inoculation. Out of those 990,000 vaccinated kids, let's say 99 die from a reaction.
An absolute tragedy for those families.
Undoubtedly. Now, let's look at the remaining 10,000 unvaccinated kids. Without the protection, let's say 200 of them catch wild smallpox, and 40 of them die from the severity of the disease.
Okay, I have the numbers.
So the health minister looks at the final ledger for the year. 99 deaths in the vaccinated column and 40 deaths in the unvaccinated column. 99 is objectively larger than 40.
The data clearly states more vaccinated kids died.
Right. So what's the flaw here?
This is exactly where a model-blind statistician throws their hands up in defeat and where a counterfactual thinker steps in to save the day. The core issue, the trap the public fell into, is base rate neglect.
Base rate neglect.
Yes, the vaccination rate was 99%. When the pool of vaccinated people is that monumentally large, of course the absolute number of rare anomalies will outpace the absolute number of events in the tiny 1% pool.
It's an illusion created by the size of the groups.
Precisely. To find the true causal effect of the vaccine mandate, we cannot just look at the real world. We have to ask the rung-3 counterfactual question.
Which is?
What if the vaccination rate in that population of 1 million children had been 0? What if the mandate never existed?
Oh, we have to build the alternate universe.
Let's calculate the death toll in that universe.
Right.
In our real-world unvaccinated group of 10,000 kids, 200 caught the disease. That's an infection rate of 2%.
Okay, 2%.
And of those 200, 40 died. That's a mortality rate of 20%. Now, we take those natural rates and apply them to the counterfactual world where all 1 million children are unvaccinated.
I see where this is going.
2% of 1 million means 20,000 children would contract smallpox. And a 20% mortality rate means 4,000 children would die.
So we place the two worlds side by side.
Mm-hmm.
In the real world with the mandate, we had 139 total deaths. That's the 99 from vaccine reactions, plus the 40 from the disease.
Right.
In the counterfactual world without the mandate, we have 4,000 deaths.
The math is sobering. By explicitly comparing the real world to the imagined counterfactual world, the causal model reveals that the vaccine program didn't kill children. It actually saved nearly 3,900 lives.
The language of counterfactuals literally saves lives by exposing the fatal deceptive flaws in raw data.
It really does.
That concept of deceptive data leads us perfectly into the next major theme of our discussion today. If we want to use causal models to clear up confusing data, we have to talk about the ultimate villains of statistics.
Confounders.
Yes, confounders.
Yeah.
These are the lurking variables that operate in the shadows, influencing both the cause and the effect simultaneously.
They create the illusion of causation where none exists, or they completely mask true causation.
How do we defeat them?
Confounding is the boogeyman that keeps data scientists awake at night. And to simplify the conceptual mechanics behind how we defeat it, Pearl offers one of the most famous and baffling examples in the field, Lord's paradox.
I love this example because it feels like a riddle.
It really does.
Let me set the stage. Imagine a university dining hall decides to study the effects of two different meal plans, Diet A and Diet B, on student weight over the course of a school year.
Okay, simple enough.
Students choose their diet in September, and the university weighs them. In May, they weigh them again. At the end of the year, two different statisticians are handed the exact same spreadsheet of results.
Let's walk through their logic.
Statistician 1 takes a macro view. They look at the overall distribution of weights for the entire group of students who chose Diet A. They calculate the average weight in September, and they calculate the average weight in May.
And what did they find?
They see that the average hasn't changed a single ounce. The bell curve just stayed exactly where it was. So statistician 1 writes their report. Diet A has zero effect on weight gain. It maintains the status quo.
A perfectly reasonable interpretation of the aggregate data.
But then statistician 2 comes in. They don't look at the aggregate. They look at the individual trajectories. They chart every student's starting weight against their ending weight.
Getting more granular.
Right. And they notice a distinct trend. For any given starting weight, whether a student started at 130 pounds or 180 pounds, the student who was on Diet A ended up weighing less in May than a student who started at that exact same weight but chose Diet B.
Oh, wow.
So statistician 2 writes their report. Diet B causes significant weight gain compared to Diet A.
So statistician 1 says there is no effect, and statistician 2 says there is a massive effect. And they are looking at the exact same numbers.
This is the paradox. How do we know who is right? Who should the university listen to?
The profound realization here is that the data alone is entirely helpless. You could stare at that spreadsheet until the end of time. You could run it through the most advanced deep learning neural network on the planet, and the AI cannot resolve the paradox.
The data cannot adjudicate between the two statisticians.
No. You need a causal diagram. You need to map out the physical reality that generated the data in the first place.
So let's draw the arrows and find the lurking variable. What is it?
The key detail is how the students got on the diets. The university didn't run a rung 2 RCT. They didn't randomly assign the diets. The students chose them.
Ah, human behavior.
And as it turns out in human behavior, students who weighed more initially were much more likely to intentionally choose Diet A because it was advertised as a weight loss diet.
Ah, so the starting weight determined the treatment.
Exactly. So we draw our first causal arrow, pointing from initial weight to the choice of diet. But obviously, a student's initial weight also has a massive biological impact on their final weight in May. So we draw a second arrow from initial weight pointing to final weight.
And suddenly, the invisible structure is revealed. We see a fork. Initial weight is a common cause pointing to both the treatment, the diet, and the outcome, the final weight.
That is the definition of a confounder. It is a variable that sits upstream, dictating both the cause and the effect, tangling the relationship between them.
So what does the math tell us to do?
Once you draw that causal diagram, the mathematical rules of Pearl's do calculus tell you unambiguously what you must do to find the truth. You must control for the confounder. You have to lock it down.
How do you do that mathematically?
You stratify the data. You group the students by their initial weights. You only compare 150-pound students to other 150-pound students.
Making it apples to apples?
Yes. When you hold the initial weight constant, you are effectively blocking the confounding path. And when you do that, it becomes undeniably clear that statistician 2 is correct. Diet B causes more weight gain.
So, statistician 1 was tricked.
Statistician 1 was tricked by the aggregate data because the heavier students disproportionately chose Diet A, dragging the average up and creating a false equilibrium. Statistician 1 was just measuring statistical associations. Statistician 2, by controlling for the starting weight, was measuring actual causal effects.
It's like putting on a pair of X-ray glasses. The diagram tells you what to calculate. But this raises a practical question for me. How do we bridge the gap between these conceptual arrows drawn on a whiteboard and actual hard computable numbers? How do we attach mathematical weight to these arrows so a computer can process them?
That is a great question. This is where we transition into one of Judea Pearl's most famous contributions to computer science: Bayesian networks.
Bayesian networks.
Yes. When we draw a causal arrow from a variable x to a variable y, we are qualitatively saying that y listens to x. But to build a functional model, we have to quantify how much it listens.
We have to give it a number.
We do this by putting probabilities behind the arrows. And the book uses a highly relatable, albeit stressful, example to explain how these networks compute: waiting for your luggage at an airport carousel.
Oh man, I have lived this nightmare. Standing at the baggage claim at a foreign airport. I think the book uses Zanzibar, right?
Yes, Zanzibar.
You're just sweating, exhausted, watching the same black suitcase go around the belt for the 5th time and wondering if your bag is ever going to appear or if it's currently sitting on a tarmac in Germany.
We have all felt that creeping anxiety. Let's build a Bayesian network to formalize that exact feeling. The probability of your bag finally appearing on the carousel depends on 2 primary causal factors.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, was the bag actually transferred onto your connecting flight during your layover in Aiken? Let's call that Boolean variable bag on plane.
That's the big one.
Second, how much time has elapsed since the carousel started turning? Let's call that variable time elapsed.
So we have a simple structure.
Yeah.
2 distinct causal variables pointing to one final effect variable. Bag on carousel.
Yes. Now I have to assign probabilities or beliefs to these nodes. Before the carousel even starts moving, you have a baseline belief. You might assume there's a 50% chance your bag made that incredibly tight 30-minute connection in Aiken.
Okay, so that's a coin flip.
That is your prior probability. Now the buzzer sounds and the carousel starts. Bags start tumbling out. If it's only the first minute and your bag isn't there, you aren't panicking yet. The probability that it's still coming is high because not much time has elapsed.
Right, you expect a delay.
But as the minutes tick on, the dynamic changes. Let's say 10 minutes pass. You know from experience that all bags are usually unloaded within 10 minutes. The evidence is mounting against you.
I'm doing the mental math at the carousel. I'm thinking, okay, it's minute 10, it's not here. It's minute 12, still not here.
And that mental math is exactly what the Bayesian network is doing formally. Because the variable time elapsed is increasing, but the variable bag on carousel stubbornly remains false, the network mathematically updates your belief about the hidden upstream cause, bag on plane.
Oh, wow. So the probability that it made the connection in Aiken plummets with every passing second.
Exactly. The evidence flows backward up the causal arrow to revise your prior belief.
It updates our beliefs dynamically as new evidence comes in. It's taking human intuition, that gut feeling of dread at the airport, and turning it into a rigorous mathematical equation.
That is the magic of Bayesian networks. By putting conditional probabilities behind the causal arrows, we create a computable network that mimics how a rational human mind updates its internal model of the world based on causal structure and incoming data.
Which brings us to the grand finale of this journey. We've talked about how dumb data is, and we've explored the complex mathematical tools humans use to understand causality. But how do we close the loop?
Bringing it back to AI.
Exactly. How do we return the causal revolution back to its origins in artificial intelligence? How do we build robots that can actually communicate in our mother tongue, the language of cause and effect?
To determine if an AI has truly mastered this, Pearl proposes a fascinating concept: a mini Turing test for causal reasoning.
A mini Turing test.
Yes. The original Turing test, as most people know, was simply about a machine passing for a human in a text conversation. The mini Turing test is much deeper. It is about a machine proving it actually understands the mechanics of reality.
How does it pass?
To pass this test, a machine needs to be able to hear a simple story, independently translate that story into a causal diagram, and then accurately answer rung 3 counterfactual questions about it.
It has to be able to ask, what if things had happened differently?
Yes. Let's look at a practical, real-world application in home robotics to see how this completely changes human-computer interaction. Let's talk about a smart vacuum cleaner.
Okay, this is a phenomenal example of where current AI fails and causal AI succeeds.
It really is.
Imagine you own a top-of-the-line smart robot vacuum. You happen to work the night shift, so you are fast asleep in your bedroom at 2 p.m. However, the robot's pre-programmed schedule tells it to start vacuuming the upstairs hallway.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. It rolls out of its dock, fires up the loud motor right outside your door, and wakes you up. You are furious. You stumble out of bed, look down at the robot, and yell, "You shouldn't have woken me up."
A very natural human reaction. Now, let's analyze the AI's internal translation of that interaction. What would a current deep learning, purely data-driven system do with that verbal command?
I mean, it would look for associations, right? It would probably log a negative reward or an error code associated with a specific action. Vacuuming upstairs at 2 p.m.
Right.
Without any deeper understanding, it would likely just initiate a blanket ban on that action. It would literally never vacuum the upstairs again while you are in the house.
It creates a rigid rule because it lacks nuance. It lacks a causal model of why you were angry. But a causal robot, a machine that has passed the mini Turing test, understands the hidden mechanism behind your frustration.
How does it process it?
It takes your English sentence, "You shouldn't have woken me up," and translates it into a causal chain. It knows that vacuuming causes noise. It knows that noise causes the human to wake up. And it knows that waking up prematurely causes the human to be unhappy.
It maps out the sequence of events leading to the negative outcome.
More importantly, it understands the specific why of the negative outcome. If the robot understands that noise is the crucial mediating variable between the action of vacuuming and the outcome of unhappiness, it can start running counterfactual simulations.
Like thinking of alternatives.
Yes. It can ask itself, what if I vacuum upstairs, but the human's GPS tracker says they aren't home? It knows the human won't hear the noise. The causal chain is broken, so there is no unhappiness.
Or it could ask, what if I engage a low-power silent mode on my motor?
Exactly. No noise is generated, so again, no unhappiness. It knows it can still fulfill its primary duty of cleaning the floors without triggering the negative outcome because it actually understands the mechanism.
I really want to take a moment to reflect on how profound this concept is. We are talking about giving a machine of metal and silicon the capacity to evaluate counterfactuals, to look at its own past actions and ask, what if I had acted differently?
It's incredible.
When a machine can do that, it gains something terrifyingly human. It gains the capacity for regret. It gains the capacity to understand responsibility for its actions.
And ultimately, it gains the capacity for moral decision-making. You cannot have morality without counterfactual thinking. To judge any action as right or wrong, ethical or unethical, you have to be able to imagine the alternative actions that could have been taken in that exact moment and weigh the different outcomes against each other.
That's deep thought.
By embedding causal diagrams into AI architecture, we aren't just making them smarter. We are laying the foundational groundwork for machines with human-like adaptability, agency, and ethical reasoning.
It is a massive paradigm shift. We're moving away from teaching machines to merely recognize pixel patterns or word frequencies, and we are starting to teach them to understand the fundamental fabric of reality.
Many in the field believe it is the only viable path forward to what we call strong AI. Machines that don't just mimic intelligence through parlor tricks and massive data sets, but actually possess true generalized comprehension.
Which brings us to the end of our exploration into the Book of Why. I want to leave everyone listening with a final provocative thought to mull over.
What's that?
If causal reasoning, the ability to ask why and imagine what if, is the defining dividing line that separated early humans from the rest of the animal kingdom, then giving a machine a causal reasoning module is a watershed moment in the history of our planet.
Yeah, it really is.
That might be the exact moment artificial intelligence stops being a mere tool like a hammer or a calculator and crosses the threshold to become a distinct, conscious entity. By teaching machines to understand why, We are forcing ourselves to finally decipher how our own minds work.
It is a mirror reflecting our own cognition back at us, revealing the invisible structures of our own thoughts.
It truly is. So as we wrap up this grand synthesis of Season 1, if there is one single empowering takeaway you hold on to from everything we've discussed today, let it be this. You are smarter than your data. Your spreadsheets, your analytics dashboards, your machine learning algorithms, they only know what happened. You possess the unique power to know why.
A powerful truth to remember as we navigate this algorithmic age.
We will be back with Season 2 soon.